Okay, so hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our final user group meeting before we break for summer, and we'll be back in September to resume regular programming. But we will be taking a bit of a break over the summer during July and August, so we won't be having another meeting until the one in September. Today was supposed to be an open house, and I apologize to everybody who wanted to join us. But we had a little bit of water damage here in the office, and unfortunately, they're in repairing it. So we will look forward to hosting you at an open house in September. So I'll be sending out something about that closer to that date. Our agenda for today is close reach news with one of the Kevins. So when I call on Kevin, it's Kevin O'Rourke, I mean. Kuno is here today from Denmark at an earlier time of the day for him. So instead of later in the night, Kuno is here to talk to us about some exciting things that they're working on at QualiWare for the next feature release of the product. We're going to sneak in an update on CBP. Mike Haley has developed a new AI simulation assistant that he's going to show us at the end of Kuno's presentation. And then, of course, we have time for open forum, and we'll discuss the logistics for the next meeting in September. Switching over to Mike, we're going to move on now to the next part of our presentation, which is to have Mike Haley join us. And Mike, I'm sure you're out there somewhere. Many of you know Mike. Mike is with CBP Software, and he is the VP for DTO Advisory. Mike has been doing a lot of work with integrating the CBP product with QualiWare and enhancing the DTO capabilities of the tool. He's got something fun and exciting to show us today. He first gave a sneak preview of this on a webinar he did co-hosted with QualiWare a couple of weeks ago for manufacturing, and he showed his new AI simulation assistant. So Mike is going to spend a few minutes here today showing that to you. And then again, if you have questions, please do feel free to raise your hand or pop it into the chat, and don't be shy.
I know many of you have seen collaborative business planning over the years, shall we say. We like to think we're part of an enrichment for QualiWare, where we bring financial analysis and simulation capabilities to the suite. So I just want to share kind of what we've been up to and actually kind of echo some of the things that Kuno's talked about. So let me make sure I get the share and not the end event there.
Yeah, please don't hit the yellow button. Don't hit the yellow button. Thank you. Yep, so, that works.
That works good. Okay, very good. So you're probably familiar with, obviously QualiWare and its role in compliance and enterprise architecture, and many of the things that are commonly talked about in these user group sessions and QualiWare webinars and so on. We focus specifically with CBP on what we'll call business process management, or BPM, which is another part of that three-legged stool. And sitting in the middle here is what we call the digital twin of an organization, or DTO. Sometimes you could call it a business management system, kind of one and the same. It's basically bringing your organization, all the bits and pieces, into a digital environment, which QualiWare does very well. Of course, we know that. On the business process management side, what CBP does is focus on really 4 or 5 key capabilities around process optimization. So we use techniques around, Roger, you mentioned value stream. We talk about value stream mapping, more in conventional lean business process optimization type of work. And I'm going to go into a live demo and show you some of these. Resource and cost management, because we do operational and financial planning, and we bring that together as your business operates. So we can use a technique called activity-based planning to support that. The simulation capability, and this is really what we're going to stress today. Again, we've had that from day one, but it was more of a limited in the number of people that could run and do simulations. So this new AI-enabled simulation assistant kind of gives everybody these capabilities. So we'll walk through that. And then business capability management, which again, I know many of you are familiar with from kind of the EA world. And we apply what's called theory of constraints. We actually identify where the bottlenecks are in your business, and then obviously give you a tool to help navigate around those bottlenecks, and use the very visual interface of QualiWare with CBP to do that. So all of that together, we can bring additional content, additional enrichment to the QualiWare web interface, and be able to navigate through that. So just one more slide before I jump into a demo. So DTO models, develop in QualiWare. Typically, they're going to be done by somebody that has the expertise. We call them CBP modelers, to work with business process owners to define the business, to really create the business ontology. So what CBP gives you are fundamental building blocks of any business. Cecile mentioned we presented a few weeks ago in manufacturing. We've done a lot of work in manufacturing, but we've also done a lot of work in government services. I'm not going to come back to that. There's some use cases I can point you to if you're interested in more information. So the business ontology is described in two diagrams, in kind of value stream mapping and in activity-based planning, and we'll talk about specifically those. So this becomes the modeler tool. Right now, for those of you familiar with QualiWare, this actually runs in QLM. We're working now to port that into the web modeler for probably the QualiWare 11 release, although we may make some advances. I won't guarantee it for 10.10.5, but early indications are that we can make that conversion fairly nicely. Once the business structure is created, then we need to get data. So we pull operational and financial data from a variety of sources in the organization. Certainly, if you have a financial system, which everybody would certainly have, we can bring that in, load those into our resource structure. But your operational systems. So for example, work we did at Passport Canada. So they have a operational system for managing passports, passport intake and approvals and processing and printing and so on. So we're able to mine that information to feed these CBP models. Once that's done, then that becomes the kind of central point of knowledge around your business. And then you can use what we call this now calling the simulations assistant. So the process owners, maybe the same people that helped in the construct of those models, or business analysts, or anyone that's, I'll say, has some familiarity with the business, can now run different simulations in basically the snap of a finger. And we'll walk you through that. And again, because we deploy this over the QualiWare web interface, all of the other components of the full QualiWare suite are at your fingertips. And we've got some specialized desktops as well that, bring forward additional information kind of from the CBP world, as it were. So that's kind of a little bit of backgrounder, a little bit of structure. Let me jump in, and feel free again. I'll rely on you, Cecile, to keep an eye on the chat for me, but feel free to interject at any time as well. So you'll recognize the QualiWare interface. So because we really take activity analysis to the next level, any diagrams that you're using today that use activities, we can intersect with. So be that a workflow diagram, business process network, anything where activities, because we use the same activity template to do the modeling, both from a value stream and resource planning in both of the two diagrams that CBP supports. The first one would be the value stream. So when you're looking at a process, again, it's more conventional around lean practices where you're looking at reducing lead times, identifying waste, looking at resource components associated with delivering service delivery to your clients. So we bring those diagrams in, and as I click around the model, the flow, I can actually see conventional on the diagram itself, conventional lean timeline, sawtooth timeline, and key metrics. But I can also see some detailed information around here. I'm on sort and scanning bags. You can see that this is a very high labor intensity activity. We follow along with the QualiWare's Chixie airport model. This is around baggage handling. So this is all around the departure of placing your bag and getting it ultimately onto the plane, hopefully with you on it, or on the plane with you are on. So we can see things like the inflow. So we know coming into this, we need to have tractors and we need baggage handling labor, and we get to see how much of it and what the cost components are. We see where it's going to. So these are all driven from the other diagram, which is activity-based planning. But we get to see all of the cost and operational requirements for delivery of that particular activity, which is part of the process. And we can interrogate as we move around. And again, intent is not here to kind of show you too much background on CBP, but I do want to give you a bit of context before we jump into simulations. So that's kind of the value stream. And if I go back and I go to the activity-based planning component, and here's where we can see, let me just zoom out on that. So there's where we see some of the activities that we just looked at in the value stream. We also have the arrivals of planes, because that is the whole process around baggage handling, both outbound and inbound, and it's handled by these different resources. So the labor baggage handlers, so some supervisors, we've got a maintenance crew that maintain the tractors that run the carts back and forth to the planes. And then these activities are done to support what? To support flights. And in this airport, Chixie, it has domestic flights and it has international flights, each of which have its own unique process requirements and resource requirements based on safety protocols and handling protocols. So that can all be modeled. And like we did, and if I click here, I'm going to see the same information that I saw in the value stream. But now I can start investigating some of my resources as well. So I can look at my tractors. What's the fully loaded cost of my tractors? So equipment, labor, facilities, assets, all of that can be brought in, and then we can look at the true cost and how those costs are deployed throughout the model. So that's just a little background or kind of on CBP. What we've done, and again, some of you I know have seen this in past. Typically, we can bring all of this information into a kind of results database, think of it that way. And conventionally, we've applied BI tools like Power BI and create, pretty graphs and analysis and scenario comparisons and so on. And that's really where this started. The work with AI was in an easier way to have out of the box visualizations around how your business is operating. So take away the need to have a specialist that could do Power BI and basically provide some quick out of the box analysis. So in this case, we're looking at the baggage handling. We have a total revenue, and the storyline, some of you may have seen it, is that Chixie outsources their baggage handling to a third party. So they pay this company a fee based on the number of bags that are handled. And obviously that company has some costs, and they can actually determine, are they making money working with the Chixie Airport? In this case, they are, but not much, only about a 4% margin. So this is just high level revenue, cost, profit, green because it's positive. And I can look at now my cost breakdown. So where are my cost items? I can see some visualizations. I can see some tables of information if people prefer that. And as I look across, I can now start to dissect that profitability, in this case, into two types of outputs, or what we call demands, your domestic and international flights. You can see we're making our money for the most part on international flights, and we're actually very small sliver there, if I can get it. We're losing, there we are, we're losing some money on our domestic flights. In fact, you see it a little more readily down here. So we're just about break even on domestic flights. We can go a little deeper. So if we wanted to look at the core activities around our business process, we can see that. We could actually get maybe a financial and operational report. So if I look at my demands and I say, well, let's look at those domestic flights that I'm losing my money on. Why would that be? So how much time of labor do I have? What's the resultant cost? And, are there ideas that come to mind from a more conventional financial and operational reporting? And we can then look at running different simulations. I'll come back to some of these. Well, let me jump on the VSM. For anybody that's a VSM advocate, all of the metrics around value-added ratios, roll throughput yields, takt times, cycle times, and so on, those are all be calculated from that model as well. And the last thing is that it will provide some observations. So again, people that are knowledgeable in the business will probably have the same observations, but they may miss one or two. So it's just flagging that, hey, domestic's losing money. Talks about your capacity, your utilization of some of your resources. So we track that through theory of constraints. We know how well we're using our resources. And again, we want to try to optimize those. It'll identify where the primary bottleneck is, where we'll probably bump into a problem if our demand increases. So that's all, kind of analysis capabilities. Over on the left-hand side, we have all of our data, our ABP data. So again, you can go into the modeling tool itself and make those appropriate changes in the model, or you can come and just make the appropriate changes in your demands or your resources, your costs, and your operational information. And so let's run a little scenario here, a little manual scenario. So we're losing money on domestic flights. So maybe we don't want, if we had the flexibility, what would happen if we didn't do as many of those flights? So I'm doing about 1,000 flights. This is a weekly model. So all of our models are time period based, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual, depends on your planning horizons. So if we wanted to change that, I said, let's drop it down, say by 20%. So I'm going to go down to 800. Any projections, any predictions on, are we going to be more profitable by doing that, to get rid of that kind of break even and low profitability? You can put something in the chat or speak out. What do you think is going to happen? Any guesses?
No. I'm going to say no.
It's going to be worse or better?
I'm going to say it's going to be worse.
It's going to be worse. Okay,
well,
let's run it. Did somebody say better?
Yes,
no.
Gerald.
Okay, I got, well, good news is I got differing opinions. So let's actually see what the simulation. So I run that simulation, and yes, it is worse. So we went from making money to losing even more money. Okay.
I just did that for another option.
Okay, I appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
Gerald. Thank you. Thank you. So some of you obviously are very business savvy, and you would quickly see the problem is our resource utilization. So we're still carrying fixed costs on these resources, and we can actually now see how our utilizations have changed. So the yellows are indication of where they are in relation to thresholds, which we can set on all of our resources. And now they've gone down. So when we look at our utilizations of our simulation, they're lower. So all of those costs now have to be carried. In fact, if I go to my demand analysis, domestic flights are losing even more, but now my international flights are starting to lose money too. So we want to do something better than that, obviously. So that's all that capabilities. You can actually see the change, and it gets highlighted here. But let's reset this. Let's now go over to our AI assistant on the sideline here. Let me expand that because it'll make it a little bit easier for everybody to see. And I can say, what would the impact be of increasing flights by 20%? So let's say the airport Chixie comes to us, say, hey, we're going to take on some new routes. We think that, 3 months down the road, we're going to have our number of domestic and number of international flights go up by 20%. So I can actually quiz the model on that. I could go and make those changes manually like we just did, but this will go and actually apply those changes and do some analysis. You can see immediately that it says, oh, you're in an overcapacity situation. You don't have the baggage handler supervisor or tractor drivers to handle that particular volume. And it'll give you a little bit of verbiage here. And it'll come up with some estimates around, how we could improve that, i.e., I call it the brute force approach, add more resource, which is going to have a cost. So we could run that. It actually asks you to do, hey, do you want me to run all or any of those? Or we could start to do other types of analysis. So we could say, are there any industry standards we should be considering? So it'll go out now and look across the airline industry, compare what it knows about how we operate our business, and come back with maybe some suggestions around, hey, you're not quite up to the standard here. So it goes and looks at IATA airport handling, sort of says ramp time 30 to 45 minutes. So we're behind there. Baggage improvement system targets a mishandled. Our mishandled baggage rate is higher. So it's coming with a bunch of ideas around how we could maybe improve or where we should focus our energies to get up to industry standards. We could also then go and say, well, let's maybe, as is to say here, we've got one here. One of the things, and some of you have seen my previous demos of this Chixie Airport, was let's put an automated baggage handling system. These guys are doing it all manually. So let's ask it, what is the impact of implementing an automated baggage handling system? Nice thing about AI is you don't have to be terribly correct on spelling, which is really good for me sometimes. So I'm going to send that off, and it's going to kind of do some comparisons, say, okay, what would an automatic typically in the industry provide? How does that compare to our model and what we do? This will probably take a little bit longer to do. Okay, so it's come back. Automatic bag delivers, so it's actually 350 to 600 bags per hour would be the norm. Sorting and scanning, both on departures and arrivals, would have that impact. And it starts to talk about the assumptions that would make with regard to total lead time. So it says, hey, do you want me to run those? And yeah, just say run it. So it's going to take those industry standards now, apply them to my business model, and see what impact that can have on making the adjustments. So you can see I've reduced some of the capacity already. It ran 8 changes. So it's making some good progress, it says. So it's a baggage handlers are still a broken constraint. So it says, okay, do we want to go ahead and make some changes there? So it got close. And so let's, yes, add those. Again, natural language, typical AI. So now it's added the baggage handlers necessary to meet that overcapacity situation. And I come back now and I can see I don't have any broken constraints, and I go to my P&L analysis, and wow, I've gone from $10,000 a week to $67,000 a week. So it points out, though, that we haven't added depreciation. So we could then say, oh, well, okay, this capital investment is, let's say, $3 million. We could figure out the depreciation, add that into the simulation, and so on. So anyway, so you're only somewhat limited by your creativity now to be able to kind of use the AI system with some business knowledge. You certainly wouldn't expect somebody that doesn't understand the business well enough to guide these simulations. But if you have that, and that could be at the very detailed process owner level or at the manager or at the executive level, that they can run these simulations. And then you can save these simulations as well. So it'll put a timestamp on. So just put QUG, and I could write in what I wanted to do. But once I save that scenario, now others can pick that scenario up. And they say, oh, Mary had a great idea, but let's add this. So maybe the finance team now comes in and said, okay, well, here's the depreciation for these types of equipment. Here's what it would add. They can add in that information. So this vision of collaborative business planning really comes to life with the AI assistant. And then I can see all those changes. So it'll highlight for me all the changes that it ran through as it made the updates for that automatic baggage handling. So I could confirm that those make sense as well. I can get a report but I can then jump into my detailed analysis too. So if I can expand this too. So now I can see my simulations versus my thing at a very, very detailed level. Okay, any questions on that? I just want to finish off with a couple of use cases. We okay on timing, Cecile?
Yep, we're fine. We're doing good. I saw lots of thumbs up.
Good.
I have Roger has a question. He says, as industrial engineers, we have been trying this for a while without AI. How well is it working for pure service industries?
Yeah, well, this could be considered a pure service industry per se. So it's a nice segue into some of the work that we have done, particularly in the federal government over the past few years. Not with the simulation system. This is net new, as Cecile pointed out. We're expecting this to be available with the 10.10.5 release. Kuno didn't give a time, so I better not say a time either.
Okay. And nobody
But
asked either.
nobody
That
asked,
was one.
surprisingly,
I
yes.
know. I know.
I know what we're targeting, but I don't want to put words in Kuno's mouth. Yeah, service industry. What's interesting about the service industry compared to manufacturing? I mean, manufacturing usually has a lot of good operational data. They use MRP and ERP systems and so on. Service industries, little less so, depending on financial service, banking, yes. I use the example of Passport. They have very detailed information. We were able to mine that very successfully for getting, unit times and efficiencies and things like that, because they're basically tracking everything that happens to that passport, every touch to that passport application as it moves through the system. So it's really going to depend. When we put these models together, that's just because data is not available in the system doesn't mean we're handcuffed. We can actually put some assumptions and best guesses and talk to the experts around how that work is done. We have a capability. We validate these models. There's a whole structure around how these models are built, and I'll point you back to the some of the webinars you can find on the QualiWare YouTube channel that'll explain some of that. But you're right, Roger. It is a lovely IE industrial engineering tool. We have great success. We always say if we can get an industrial engineer and a CPA working on these projects together, it's a match made in heaven with the technology. So okay, I talked about. I'll just finish up, and feel free to add some other questions if you like. But if you go to
Carol's got his hand up. Mike, sorry, I didn't see
go
you
ahead,
before
Carol. Sorry,
before
I
you
missed that.
switched.
Hey, Mike, looks great. So going back to this LAM page, is any of the data feeding those previous QLAM or QualiWare models that you were showcasing? Or is that something that you would anticipate you would integrate in 10.10.5?
Say again regarding the data.
So whatever the data you are feeding those simulations right now, you're saving the number of experiments or simulations. Does that information get reflected in the QualiWare database anywhere at this moment?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So if I go back to let's go back to this model. So all of the structure of these CBP models has data. So, the volumes of demands, how much output does your organization have on a time period basis, be it a month or a quarter or whatever. what kind of consumption rates, how much activity is necessary, how much process is necessary to deliver those outputs, how much resource is necessary to conduct those activities, what capacity do those resources have. So that's all core operational data that is, I'll say, mined from systems or experts and brought into the model to then validate. That's a key component. So when we build these models, we make sure we validate them and they give reliable results before we use them for simulations. So
Yeah.
we build that structure and validate before we can go and look to the future with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my question is those simulation variables and constraints that you're adding and the number of experiments that you're running, does that get reflected anywhere on this model or anywhere on the background of those models that you have?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I understand what you're saying now. So yes, if we run the simulation, so we looked at making a change here, we can actually then push that back to the visualization, the diagram visualization, and then you could see that in the diagram.
Okay. Either in a diagram or any of the matrices or catalogs that you might.
Any of the all
right.
of this would be actually updated as well. Yeah. So you keep that context, the visualization context, so you don't just go off into the simulations and kind of lose track of kind of what's happening from a flow point of view, because this is a very important view as well. And this is actually one of the reasons we chose QualiWare way back when is that great user interface that it has.
Well, I think it's just a great point to highlight that this is not a standalone solution. This also could be very much integrated with the rest of your enterprise architecture and management system, right?
So, absolutely.
Thanks,
absolutely.
Thanks, Carol.
Gerald here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Carol, that was well done and well specified. What I was thinking while Mike was talking is, what if you have an organization that's sort of starting, okay, they're doing a certain workflow, but they want to say, okay, what is the optimum or what is the international standard or guidelines for building a better workflow? Is that and how now this is probably getting back to building the workflow, not necessarily AI, but is there an optimum way to build this workflow and then take the values from your workflow and plug them into this optimum to see if you change your workflow, whether you get more value out of the solution?
Yeah. No, that's really great, Gerald. We actually differentiate between what we call simulations, which is really making, I'll call it, data changes and how things can be improved within the current structure of your business. But we can also create scenarios which allow us to change our total activity and demand structure, add new maybe services, maybe outsource or insource from a resourcing planning point of view. And again, we can do that in the modeling interface and then make that available to the simulation assistant as well. So you could kind of run those side by side. Certainly and this is one of the areas for development, and Kuno mentioned it with regard to the core QualiWare AI, is the ability to design and create diagrams as well. So we can use AI or we will be able to use AI to help guide that build, which could then evaluate some of these best practices as you kind of move forward. So now it still is future state planning. You're doing today what you're doing, and then it's a question of, is it worth the journey to get to this new state, and how are you going to do that? It's not going to happen overnight. This is one of the advantages of having multi-period models, because then we can do it in an incremental fashion as well. And we can see what the resource and cost impact is as you move towards that ideal state.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. I did want to just point out if there is some more information, if people are interested, on the cbpsoftware.com, -software.com site, there are some use cases there. There's quite a few of the manufacturing that we've done recently. We ran a program last year with Canada's Advanced Manufacturing Supercluster. So there's some of those use cases there. There are some public sector ones as well, stuff that we've done here in Nova Scotia. I'm based in Halifax. And some of the work we did at Service Canada with the, I'm sure we all remember the pains of the post-pandemic passport issue. So we leaned into to help in that with resource planning modeling. And Veterans Affairs, who have always had quite a backlog and service delivery problem with benefits, disability benefit application. So there's a bit, if you click through that, you can get a little bit of a storyline on the work that was done. And if you're interested in understanding what a DTO can do for your organization, we've got this publicly available as well. So if you go to the DTO Advisor tool, and you can just put in whatever industry you're in or whatever department you're in. It'll do some research on your industry. You don't have to give it confidential information. It'll apply what it knows about QualiWare and CBP and DTO in general. It's not just CBP related information, and give you some insights. There's a few here, like if I click on public sector, it's already kind of preloaded with public sector. But if you wanted to do, I work in, let's say, shared services. I saw some shared services, Canada.
Canadad.
Dean, yeah, it helps me with this. How can DTO help me? So it'll take a little while. It's going to go out and do a bit of research from what it can get from the public domain around Shared Services Canada. Brings that together with what a DTO traditionally offers, particularly with regard to the CBP resource planning and costing model, and give you some ideas really of how a DTO could potentially be applied, and maybe give some ideas around starting points. So common challenges, accountability, budget pressure, mounting treasury board scrutiny, true cost of service delivery. So as you bill out your services to your client base, workforce planning capacity, scenario planning, value stream, waste reduction, and service delivery, and so on. So, and it'll if it can find some kind of reference case. In this case, it found Veterans Affairs one. It knows quite a bit about that one. So, but you can play around with that at your own leisure and kind of see if the DTO might be a fit for you. And as by all means, you can reach out to Close Reach or ourselves or QualiWare for additional information.
Thank you, Mike. Maybe you want to pop that link into the chat.
Sure.
Folks, so that way it's there. That would be great. Does anybody have any other questions for Mike before we move on to our next part of the agenda? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mike, for your presentation.
Pleasure.
It looks very interesting. We certainly had lots of, again, clapping and thumbs up and hearts. So I think all around, everybody was quite pleased with everything that they saw here today. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, I'm going to go back to where I was. And as Mike mentioned, Close Reach is a CBP partner. So if you would like any additional information on what you saw here today, please feel free to reach out to me. The software is available on the Government of Canada software licensing supply arrangement as well. And if you'd like to have any further conversations around some of the things that either Kuno showed today or Mike showed us today, please do feel free to reach out. We're friendly people. We don't bite. Okay, so we have come to the end of our meeting, and we are going to wrap things up and talk about what's going to happen next. We're going on summer break. Hooray, summer's here. Our next meeting is going to be the 28th of September, so please save the date. We will send out, probably within the next couple of weeks, a save the date invitation for for the folks who were on our meetings this year, just so that everybody can get it into their calendar. So if you registered for or attended one of our user group meetings this past year, you will receive a calendar invitation to join us for our September user group meeting. It will be in a virtual format like this, as we normally do, but it will also be an open house. And the time will be from 3 until 4:30 or 5 o'clock on the last Monday of September. As well, we will be sending out to the same group of people a survey seeking your input into the format of these meetings and the content that you want to see. So this is a users group meeting, so we want to make sure that we're giving you the information and resources that you're looking for. So it would be very much appreciated if you would participate in that. And then last but not least, thank you very much for your support over the last year. Thank you for attending all of these meetings and participating. It is very much appreciated. You guys always have questions. You always have comments, which is always really great. So thank you very much for doing that. And I will stop the presentation here and just allow, if anybody has questions, want to have a chat about anything at all, feel free to do so. Otherwise, thanks again for your participation. Thanks to our speakers today. Kuno, appreciate you joining from Copenhagen. Mike, thank you for joining us from Nova Scotia, and look forward to seeing you guys back in September.